All right, welcome to March RWBY Madness tournament. We have our exciting round one Vale bracket pairings. So here we go. The first matchup is Players and Pieces, the number one seed, versus the First Steps Part 2. So I was a little surprised that Players and Pieces made the number one seed, but you know it's a good episode. It finds the members of Team RWBY and Team Juniper before they actually are the teams yet. In the Emerald Forest, I believe John and Pyrrha are being pursued by a Deathstalker, and Ruby and Weiss are riding a Nevermore. And they have to eventually team up and fight these two powerful Grimm. And they end up winding up in the teams that Osmond assigns them to by the end of it. So it's a really good, episode where we actually introduce you to all the characters and see a little bit of the dynamic between some of the characters. The second one is First Steps Part 2, as they're going up against. It is the number 8 seed in the Vale bracket, and this episode features the students after they've been catapulted into the Emerald Forest, and it focuses on Ruby and her anxiety about finding a teammate, which she ends up with Weiss, which a lot of hilarity ensues, and actually begins that relationship, which we all know how that pays off through the seasons. Let's see here. What else goes on in that episode? She also, in her attempt to pitch herself to Weiss, she talks about her speed and her ability, and she shows her for speed, eventually leaving Weiss surrounded by beowulfs at the end of the episode. So, 2 great episodes, so you guys need to vote on those 2 in that bracket. Alright, second matchup in round 1 for the Vale bracket is the End of the Beginning versus Search and Destroy. Now, End of the Beginning is the one I thought would make first seed, but it's actually number 2 seed. It is the heartbreaking death of Pyrrha, and I guess Osmond as well, although he gets to come back. Spoiler alert. But yeah, this is a gut-wrenching episode where Pyrrha fights her desperate and ultimately hopeless battle against Cinder before the Dragon Grimm arrives. But despite her enormous display of her power, first time we get to see her use her magnetic ability to its full potential, she ends up losing right before, just as Ruby shows up, and then we get to reveal her Silver Eyes power, where she damages Cinder and freezes the dragon in place. So, all in all, a great episode, if heartbreaking. And that's going up against Search and Destroy, the number 7 seed in the Vale bracket. And this features Team RWBY on a mission with Professor Oobleck. So this is start a love affair with Professor Oobleck, who is one of the great characters, one of the great side characters in any of the RWBY episodes. And this is basically they're showing some Mountain Grimm, but basically Oobleck asking all the members except for RWBY why they want to become huntresses, right? Which leads to them having a fireside conversation late at night about what are their motivations, what motivates each of them to become a huntress. So another great matchup for round 1. Okay, matchup number 3 for round 1 is Ruby Rose versus the Badge and the Burden Part 2. So Ruby Rose, our very first episode, we're introduced to the character of Ruby. We're also introduced to Glenda Goodwitch, Roman Torchwick, Professor Ozpin. In this episode, we actually see, basically our introduction to Ruby and her abilities, being trained as a huntress, and then being ultimately invited to join the school by Osmond. So at the episode. So great first episode. I'm glad it's on this list here. And that goes up against Badge and the Burden Part 2. It's the number 6 seed in the Vale bracket. And this features basically Weiss coming to grips with Ruby being chosen as team leader, which causes her to question Professor Port, and actually question Ruby to her face. So, and eventually, she gets chided by Port, and eventually she comes around to it. At the end, you see her bringing Ruby coffee. And like I said, again, that builds up that relationship between Weiss and Ruby, which precedes all the volumes. So, a great matchup. So, Ruby Rose versus the Badge of the Burden Part 2. All right, and the final matchup of round 1 is Best Day Ever versus Round 1. Best Day Ever is one of my all-time favorite RWBY episodes. This features the Kung Fu fight that you kick off Volume 2 between RWBY and Team Juniper, which RWBY wins as a sole member of either team's story, remaining at the end of it. It's a great we get to see everybody, use their powers using food as their weapon type instead of their actual weapons. It's a great fun episode and a great way to kick off Volume 2. And that goes up against Round 1. It's number 5 seed in the Vale bracket. And this episode features the beginning of the Vital Festival, and where we learn about the rules of the festival. We see Team RWBY with their first matchup against Team Auburn. And the team heads to the festival grounds to eat and meet Emerald and Mercury. And then they find out that that their first round, they're going to be featuring Yang and Weiss. They're going to be representing their team in the first round. So this is the first setup, first time we at this point we know that Emerald and Mercury are bad guys, but that team doesn't. So it's kind of that little interaction before everything, goes to hell towards the end of the volume. So, but there you have it, guys. Those are your Round 1 matchups. Be sure to go in and vote in all the places for each one. So we have 4 votes total for this round in the Vale bracket. There'll be links down below to all the places you can go vote. Leave a comment down below. If you're a patron, there's Amino polls or Twitter. You can tweet us. So we'll see you.